Welcome to the Sacred Strength Podcast, everyone. We have here Jamil Popatia and Ihsan Alexander Torabi. What is the Muslim inferiority complex, and how does it manifest, or where does it manifest in our society, Jamil?
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Allahumma salli ala Sayyidina Muhammad. You know what? I don't know how to answer that in a concise way. But I think you made a great point by saying, to a certain degree, we all kind of have this. I think it's part and parcel of living in a society that is post-religious. I mean, with Ihsan in the United States, you and I in Canada here, and in not only that, but in the two most secular places of those countries, California and British Columbia, without a doubt, there's an idea that we're a minority, and a strange minority. And with that minority status, a very strange minority if you're a spiritually inclined person, comes a sense of inferiority at times. And that inferiority complex comes out, I noticed, in two ways. One, this is the most common one, perhaps even more so in our state and province, is the apologist or the believer that's desperately trying to fit in. And maybe there's a legitimate need for acceptance that believer has, or the group of believers have. And they will not stop short at trying to meet that need of acceptance, even if that means at the expense of religious authenticity and integrity. That's perhaps one extreme polar. The other side might be the angry misfit. I know I've been that for sure. The angry misfit who goes out of his way, it's usually a he, who goes out of his way to display to the society, especially in the Western society, how different he is from everyone else. And this might be as simple as wearing robes in -10 winter degrees in our weather, or it may be a inclination to continuously talk about how different he is from the rest of the lower secular disbelievers, and it's a type of self-righteous boasting. Underneath that is an inferiority complex, I've noticed. It's just they're trying to deal with it outwardly. I've been there for sure, where you go out of your way to be different, and everyone can see it except yourself. Everyone can see it. And so this is what I've noticed, and we can later get into it, Taz and Ihsan, about why this phenomenon happens, and it's still happening. I mean, I guess post-October 7th is another new inferiority complex. After 9/11 we see it everywhere. We saw it, even if we were much younger then. Maybe we even experienced it and had it ourselves. So this is what I've noticed, how it manifests. And rarely are people who have this inferiority complex, rarely are they authentically themselves.
So let's go back to the basics of the idea itself. When we say inferiority, what's the superior and what's inferior in this case? What are we talking about? What are we feeling as Muslims, for example? What are we feeling inferior to, Ihsan?
So that's a good question, because inferiority must be juxtaposed with superiority. And I think that there's such a sense living in the Western world that the Western culture, Western civilization, and it's not a sense that the Muslims have, it's a sense that the dominant environment seems to be projecting constantly. That the Western world, Western civilization, Western culture is somehow superior. And this perpetual projection of the other onto the Muslim can make a Muslim living in the West, and not even just in the West. I mean, a Muslim can really at this point be living anywhere in the world. And because of the ubiquitous presence of Western media, Western culture, Western programming, right? This is a real issue. The reason we wanted to talk about this is because you have a Muslim inferiority complex that's not limited to just Muslims living in the West. In fact, I think it's even more of a problem with Muslims living in the East.
Yes.
Because they idolize Western culture, Western lifestyle, Western paradigms. They aspire to become more and more Western. I mean, I'm shocked, to be honest, and surprised to see kids all over the Muslim world living in squalor, but yet, rapping and doing things that is common in the West.
Yeah.
And this is this sort of projection of this Western culture, which seems to be so received all over the world with the sense of, and if we want to get to the root of where this come from, I mean, we can talk about that maybe a little bit later, but I think that's an important discussion to have.
Yeah.
But it's this sense, and it might not even be conscious, right? We may not even be conscious, but we behave as if, or people can behave as if, the Western world, Western culture, Western paradigms are somehow superior to Islamic ones, to the point that we are afraid to be ourselves, as Jamil was saying.
Mm-hmm.
To the point that we're afraid to show ourselves, to be ourselves, to express ourselves, to be who we are. And this is actually really interesting. It's something that we have to talk about because it's completely upside down.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Allah says you're the best of nations, raised for mankind, because you are the ones that embrace and join what is good, and you are the ones that prevent what is evil, which we cannot say about any other nation. Quite to the contrary. So I actually think that since October 7th, this is actually beginning to break in the Western, in the Muslim mind. They're actually beginning to finally come out of this drunken sleep of somehow feeling inferior and compromising themselves and their religion so as to be accepted. They're beginning to realize no matter what we do, as Allah says in the Quran, you will not be accepted.
Exactly.
You might as well embrace, so you might as well embrace who you are, and that's just a very sort of, pragmatic reasoning behind that. I mean, we should be proud of who we are, absolutely proud, and we should have been from the very beginning. But there's a lot of history behind this, right?
Yeah.
The rise to supremacy and dominance materially by the West, which was inevitable. It was inevitable. It was destined to be this way, not because there's any inherent superiority in the West or in the Western paradigm, but because there aren't the restrictions and the limitations that exist in a faith-based culture. Right? You can't just exploit the planet and peoples, rape and pillage all over the world, colonize the entire planet and just reap the resources. Right? Islam prevents you from doing these things. So it's inevitable that the West rose to supremacy materially, militarily. We have restrictions in place. We have things that prevent us from doing that.
Right.
So I'll stop for a minute, but I mean, that's just a brief, intro into this topic, which I think we need to get into, because it's time for the Muslim world and Muslim peoples to wake up and realize, okay, we have to get our head straight. We got to get our heart straight.
Yeah.
Right? We shouldn't be idolizing and seeking to be accepted. It's time to stand and be who you are, what you were meant to be, right?
Right.
Those who enjoin good and prevent evil. Everything was given to you.
Got it. So Ihsan and Jamil, so what are symptoms of this complex, and what are their impact on one's, for example, confidence, dignity, walking Mother Earth? How does that impact? Jamil, if you can take that.
Yeah, I guess this, it's natural, I think, to want to be part and parcel of a society. Now, what happens when the society is quite sick, as in modern secular liberal societies, and they keep getting worse and worse and worse and worse, decade by decade, as we've noticed, especially Ihsan and I, who are from a different era, from the 90s, basically, in the early 2000s. And so we see that it's only natural that Muslims want to integrate, but at what cost? And is it that integration is, wanting to fit in, wanting to be part and parcel of the society? It's understandable, but we have a lot of faith tradition, as Ihsan was saying, and it's worth exploring. It doesn't mean you can't be a Western Muslim. We all are. But what it might mean is that we have to pick and choose where we want to fit in any given society. By the way, this is not only applicable here in North America. You could say the same about Tunisia, perhaps Morocco, anywhere, Egypt, anywhere in the traditional Muslim world. And for me, what it comes down to is gaining confidence. I'll give you an example. Yeah. I was having a conversation with my son, and he said to me, how do I pray Dhuhr at school? Because Dhuhr comes in, and before school's done, Asr comes in. And I said, son, you have a place there that's a quiet room that they have for students, and you ought to go there and do your Dhuhr and excuse yourself from class or from whatever activity you might be in for 5 minutes. And he was very hesitant. And he even asked me, what will they say about me? What will happen if no one else does it? There's so many, and this is the case.
Yeah.
There are so many Muslims at the school, none of them do that.
I like this example. Yeah.
None of them do that, Dad. Okay. Well, you got to do it. If you believe it's the right thing to do, and it's upon you, and it's obligatory upon you, like we've studied together, then you ought to do it. And if they don't, you're setting an example. You're not doing it to show them, watch me, look what I'm doing, I'm practicing Muslim. But you're doing it to keep your integrity with God.
Yeah.
And yes, the school counselors and teachers will think you're quite unique. And so be it. You must accept what's the hadith? Tuba lil ghuraba. We're going to be strangers in this world. And I'm starting with my young teenage son saying, get ready for it. It only gets stranger. And it's not the way of like, let me make sure that people. He even said to me, I can excuse myself and ask to go to the bathroom. I said, that's not where you're going. And so he understood that he's got to find a way to do this and be fine with saying it. And it takes a lot. It took me years to get to that place.
Okay.
So that's an example. You know?
Yeah, I have another example. When I used to work as an engineer in the corporate world, I used to literally hide actually in a corner to pray, you know. When I want to break to pray, actually, I use the excuse of going to the washroom. It was so important to me to keep the image that the surrounding environment has of me at that time. And I was having a fear, I would say, a feeling of fear of what they might think if they find me, for example, praying or me asking to go pray. So this is another example. I like to talk about examples to identify the symptoms of this complex, because it's not a problem. It's not a shame of having the complex, I think. It's a shame if you keep carrying it and not address it.
So the point you're raising is a great one, Taz, which is to do something about it.
Exactly. Yeah.
I was raised by two immigrant parents, Ihsan, you as well, to fit in, to do good in school, to don't rock the boat too much. Don't be too different. So you can imagine, I mean, it's not only, the inferiority complex comes from when you think that because you're doing something different, you're less than. You're less than. So if you're taking time out to pray, they're going to think, oh my God, he's very strange. Like, who does this in the modern world?
That is associated with a negative image, right? So that's another thing.
And I guess it takes a while to get there, but when you can take that balance and actually know that there's no threat to anyone with you praying, with you walking as a Muslim, with you living in a dignified way according to the way of Islam, the Quran, then I noticed that once you have that confidence and dignity, other people feel it and it becomes contagious. Even those who may disagree with you and maybe not even like the fact that you're a Muslim, but they respect that you stand for what you believe in and you're not wayward. I mean, it's just for your own good and everybody benefits. It's for everyone's benefit to be authentic. Like I said, Ihsan knows I use this a lot. We walk with this, you know, in nonviolent communication, we talk about authenticity and empathy. It's probably fair to say that most men find it easier to be authentic than to be empathic. And many women find it easier to be empathic rather than authentic. But that doesn't mean it's simple black and white like that. I struggle with being empathic more than I do with being authentic. But that's my nature. You might not have that. Ihsan might be a mixture of both. It's really individual. However, I noticed that once I'm myself, I feel better about myself when I'm acting with integrity. And I don't have to pretend to be something. And that's why we kind of admire those people who we see in the outside world who tell it like it is and who walk with a sense of confidence, and it does not require circumstantial anything. They don't have to be wealthy. They don't have to be big and huge and strong and intimidating, but they believe in something and they walk with that belief and it looks very confident. It ought to be that the Muslims walk like that, and it's going to take a while. Decades of colonization and brainwashing is not going to be erased overnight.
So go ahead, Ihsan.
Yeah, we've got to decolonize our minds and our hearts and our souls. So a lot of things you said here, Jamil, I just want to touch on because, really good salient points. Number one, what is the manifestation of not having an inferior complex? It's, as Jamil said, confidence. What is the root cause of the lack of that? Fear.
Right.
And confidence, the word confidence, originally in Latin, I think it literally means to be with faith. So faith is the source of confidence.
Yeah.
And it all comes down to not knowing who you are. Not knowing who you are.
Right.
So you're wanting the world, or you're waiting for the world to tell you you're okay. You're acceptable.
Right. Right.
You're okay. You're acceptable. We accept you. Right. You can be part of the group or the herd.
You're welcome in.
It is a herd.
Yeah.
Welcome in. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's a basic human need to be accepted because subconsciously, right, the primitive mind will perceive rejection or exclusion from the group as death. Right, you can't survive on your own out in the wilderness very well or very easily, if at all, historically. So we very much have this basic need to be accepted, and this is extremely strong for a child who's actually seeking to discover what their identity is in the world. This is why this is so prominent at a young age.
Yes.
Like, I'll give you a personal story. When I went into middle school, I remember the teacher was going around the class and having everybody introduce themselves, to stand up, say their name, and where they're from, because there was such a diverse group of people in Los Angeles, California.
Immigrants, yeah.
A lot of people from all over the world, right? So there's people from all over the world: South America, Korea, China, Japan, everywhere, right? And she's going around the room, and I had such an inferiority complex that I literally slid under my desk. Like, I literally just, like I'm doing now, I went and I hid under my desk so she wouldn't call on me. Because I didn't know anybody. There was nobody in my school or my class that was an Afghan from Afghanistan. I felt like an alien, man.
Yes.
I could get by. I could speak the language, no problem. Nobody would know where I'm from. It could be anybody. But now that I had to be so different from everybody else, it scared the life out of me. And I hid under my desk, and she skipped over me until the kid behind me said, he's there. You missed somebody. And then she said, "Who? What?" And, no, nobody should. Don't ever be embarrassed of where you're from. Say your name and where you're from. So I did. But that's how deep the inferiority complex can be for an individual, and it comes from not knowing who you are,
right? Where
do you come from? And it's. I don't mean this just in practical terms. Where do we truly? So where does our identity come from? Where should our source of strength and confidence come from? Well, for us as Muslims, as believers, it has to come from Allah.
Yeah,
and that has to be really impressed in such a way at a young age and adopted and embraced that we're not afraid of anything.
Right.
Like, faith in Islam is the cure to fear.
Right.
And so you were talking about fitting in to a society. Well, there's two ways to fit into a society. We can fit in either as a follower or as a leader. And if you want to be a follower, then yes, you've got to be accepted. You've got to fit in. You can't, as you said, you can't rock the boat. You can't stir the waves. You got to be like everybody else. You got to not be noticed. What's the benefit in that? What's the point in that? And the irony and the paradox is that people respect someone who knows themselves, who accepts themselves, who's not afraid of being themselves. That's actually, and the more different that person is and the more confidence he has, the more love and respect that person will actually be given, because that is leadership.
Yes.
That's leadership. The leader is the one that steps out of the herd and finds a way forward. So the question is, do you want to be, and I'm not saying this as a role or as a job or as a title, but do you want to be psychologically a follower or a leader? As a Muslim, we were created to be leaders, as we said from the beginning. Allah says in the Quran, you were created to lead to goodness, to lead people away from badness.
Yeah, I want to name Ihsan. All that is, it's really true, and it hits home. And I just want to own that I don't think a whole lot of us were raised with this. In fact, we were raised with the exact opposite. We were raised with what that teacher was trying to get out of you. Like you sinking in that seat is kind of an extreme version of what your parents wanted. Like, just fit in, just do well. Exactly. Don't rock the boat. And this is coming out now. Now we're seeing finally Like, it took a long time for Muslims to stand up against indoctrination in schools and things like that. They just kept quiet until it reached a point where they're now barking on the streets and yelling, just like everybody else. And we understand and empathize with it. Of course, the responses need to be dignified, but at least that's coming out because they realize, okay, why did we come here? We didn't come here to completely change who we are. I'm talking about the immigrant Muslims, that is. Why did we come here? It's usually for some material gain. And I often remind them, at what cost? I ask my parents too, at what cost do you want to do that for material gain? And now that people, especially here in Canada and even the United States, Ihsan, that material gain is not even feasible. It's barely feasible.
No, and some people came for material gain. Some people came as refugees, like my family fleeing. So they came to survive.
Yes.
But the question that we have to ask ourselves, and especially us as, let's say, second generation and so on,
right,
is not why did we come here? It's why were we sent here? Why were we sent here? Because you said aptly, this society is sick.
Right.
Earlier you mentioned this society is sick.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying me that I'm special or any of us here. We, those who have been given the gift of revelation, the gift of religion, the gift of faith, the gift of Islam, the gift of the Quran, the gift of the Sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ, have the medicine to the sickness.
Right.
So the question is, why were we sent here? And how are we going to benefit anybody by hiding and pretending to be something we're not?
Right.
By assimilating and by adopting there are good things in the culture surely we can benefit from.
Sure, definitely.
Why not?
That's a good
and
point.
Islam has always taken that.
Right.
Yeah.
But we have something very important to value, very important and of value to offer, and that's guidance.
And so you've touched upon, Ihsan, excuse me, Taz, you've touched upon the first archetype, the person who's kind of wants to sink in their seat, as you called it for yourself, and not be too different. That archetype, and then if you compare and contrast that with the boastful, self-righteous, not apologist, but the aggressive, I'm different, so what? You suck, I'm good, and you should be like me. Those are two very distasteful characters. And the best way is the balanced way, which is not to try to stir the pot intentionally, but also not to compromise, as our teacher says, to change anything from the pristine teachings of the religion. And those are the authentic traditional teachings. Nothing that needs to be changed in order to fit in order to be accepted. The right people will accept you. And if they don't, so be it.
The point I want to talk about here also, to bring it back in the discussion, when we discuss the idea of superiority and who we see as superior.
The Prophet ﷺ says that all human beings are equal in the sight of God. Yet they're differentiated based on their level of piety, God consciousness. So if we're looking for anything in terms of superiority or inferiority, the superior ones are those people of excellence.
Yeah.
The people that Allah praises in the Quran. And that's, in my opinion, that's the company we should be seeking. That's the people we should be wanting to be with and of. Inshallah.
And to add to that, Ihsan, it's very beautiful in the sense that oftentimes those people are hidden in the sense that they're not the flashy ones with a lot of accolades and a lot of letters behind their name. They might be the simplest of men or women, but they have good character. And they have a piety that is almost palatable, like you just feel close to God in their presence. That is the people we need to be around. And often those people are not significant in a dunyawi society, in a society that worships the material, worships prestige and status. These are the simple believers. And if we surround ourselves with them, maybe they will rub off on us. Maybe their state will become ours. But it's really important, Taz, because the question you answered was about who's superior. We don't know. We just know who to avoid, like the open sinners of major sins. We know who to avoid, but then we also don't know who's beloved to God. Remember, the saying of the Holy Prophet ﷺ that his companion, Umar ibn al-Khattab, was even beloved to God when he was, because of who he was going to be, when he did the unspeakable, burying his own daughter alive. So, the hadith is al-umur bi khawatimiha. Matters are by their endings. Therefore, how do we know who's superior and inferior? We're not even allowed, in terms of our religious teachings, to look down on the non-Muslim neighbor or colleague. Because who knows how they'll end up? And who knows what guidance they're going to get, whether through you or someone else. But, people who have upright morals don't have to be Muslim. We can interact with them and we can join in a moral compass sense with them. And then that sense of inferiority or superiority kind of dissolves. It's like, I'm doing what I do. I'm following what I consider to be true, capital T. And, not to be too inflammatory, but to hell with it if people don't like it. You see, that's a type of confidence that's not arrogance. It's just an idea of that I'm trying to follow the truth. Now, it doesn't matter that a lot of people are not. If I don't fit in that circle, so be it. The superior, Ihsan stated at the beginning, kind of this archetypal figure of, let's say, the West has a superiority complex. The more a society, a culture, a religion, a group of people, a community is westernized, the more acceptable they are. The further they are away from that, the less acceptable they are, and in that sense, less likable. And we have to get comfortable with being less likable, less acceptable, and for the most part, distanced from other people. And not all, but those who vehemently oppose what we stand for. Because a traditional believer will inevitably, undoubtedly, be antithetical to his environment if the environment is materialistic, is secular, is flat, is atheistic, and it is amoral. You can't expect different.
I'll just say, where this becomes immediate and practical and relevant in our lives is when superiority is imposed upon us. That's where we cannot be apologetic. That's really where this has to become applicable, right? That's where it becomes really important, is where we can give up this sense of inferiority because of this projection of superiority onto the Muslim world. A lot of this is happening in the aftermath of 9/11,
right? Where
Muslims really had to hide their identity. There were imams and there were sheikhs and mullahs saying, okay, if you feel afraid, don't even wear your hijab. If you feel that threatened to Muslim women and to Muslim men, right? Don't show your Islam because of this hysteria and fear. Because let's just go with the narrative that 19 hijackers took a couple of planes and flew them into the World Trade Center. Now all of a sudden that paints the entire Muslim world of at that point almost 1.25 billion people as somehow, like, how absurd and how ridiculous is this if you actually look at it on face value?
Yeah.
Out of 1.5 billion, if you got a handful of people that are committing some sort of terrorist act, just look at the statistics. Just look at the ratio. Why should I have to apologize for that? Why should I feel bad about that?
Right.
When there's 1,000 times more terrorism being done by the rest of the world, but it's not called that.
Right.
For God's sake, let's just look at the facts. About 3,000 people tragically died at the World Trade Center on 9/11. And in response to that, right, millions have died throughout the world.
Over a million
Iraq,
Iraqis alone.
in Afghanistan, in Libya, and everywhere else.
Yeah.
Right? You got to be crazy to feel inferior because they're calling you a terrorist. Like, you got to flip this. Like, you got to flip the whole thing on people. Like, wake the hell up. Like, how ridiculous is this?
Right.
It's so absurd. It's so absurd. Like what's happening after October 7th, right? 1,200 people that were killed in this attack on October 7th.
Yeah.
And the whole Palestinian people are now being labeled as terrorists, as human animals.
And I think you raise a good point, Ihsan, that the idea of like, and it has to do with inferiority complex and who's in charge. We saw Piers Morgan ask Andrew Tate, what do you think about October 7th? Will you condemn it or not? And he refused to play the game. Yeah. In other words, let's talk about let's start at 1948 and talk about terrorism from then onwards. He's not excusing October 7th or justifying it, but he's saying that's not the place to start. Because if you start there, you're not going to see what led up to that, which is decades of brutal colonization, modern day colonization.
It's hypocrisy. It's a hypocritical standard.
Absolutely.
Right? It depends on how do you even define that word terrorism.
Right.
So the first question is, do you first of all condemn the displacement of 750,000 Palestinians at the formation of this state of Israel? Was that right? Was that wrong? Mm-hmm. Should these people be expunged and being refugees for 3 generations now?
Yes.
Do you condemn the 17-year prison situation that they've created in Gaza? I mean, the constant taking of their land, the settlers, the atrocities, the endless operations that have, killed thousands, tens of thousands of Palestinians up until the point. Can we condemn that first? And then absolutely, if we're going to use the same measuring stick, absolutely it's condemned.
That's why I wanted to talk about superiority complex, superiority in the inferiority complex. This is it's hard for me. Usually people want to fit in an environment that they see as, I wouldn't say superior, but something that
it resonates with them.
Resonate with them and contribute to them feeling themselves or what they want to be, right?
I'll just say this, Jamil, because it's based on what you said. Mm-hmm. The ones who are superior, and superiority is truth. Mm-hmm. So people want to be with truth. Mm-hmm. So who has the truth should have no fear in being that or expressing it. Mm-hmm. Be the people of truth.
And, you mentioned at the beginning, Ihsan, and I'll touch on that now, when Taz was saying, who do you want to be like? Who do you want to fit in with? Well, it's about time that the global Muslim community stop trying to fit into Western standards and realize that they have their own way, they have their own culture, they have their own cultures, and they have their own path. And it's beautiful. Others see the beauty in it.
Yeah.
People go to Turkey, people go to Morocco, people go to Iran, and they see the beauty of culture, art, architecture, everything. And they are busy filling out immigration papers.
You know why, Jamil? I just want to cut you here just to build on that. Because the West has worked a lot on portraying their values,
right,
and exaggerating and
advertising
in their films, in their media, and people see that like, what kind of compassion is this? What kind of kindness is this? We look up to that now, right? Mm-hmm. So it's all in their media, in their films, in their movies.
I think it's best to ask people like you, Taz. You came here as an adult.
Yeah.
Ihsan wasn't born here, but he was raised here. I was born and raised here. So my experience is totally different. This is home for me. There's nothing to compare and contrast with. Mm-hmm. So, and then when I go to explore those places that Ihsan talked about and the beautiful architecture and art and all those, I go to explore there and I realize they're not interested in what I'm interested in. And it's sad because then again, you've gone from being quite a stranger in your home place, let's say Vancouver, and you go to somewhere east of the water, and now all of a sudden you're interested in things that nobody cares about anymore. Calligraphy, it's very rare. Like things that are dying arts, religiosity, all that stuff. They're trying so hard to get what we have. And we are trying to convince them, don't lose what you've been blessed with. Don't lose what you've been blessed with because so the immigrant, the person who comes, will be able to see that the roads aren't paved with gold.
Yeah, and the shiny stuff is not reflecting gold. It's reflecting something else.
It's quite sad when you go into these Eastern Islamic countries, civilizations, and you see, like you said, the legacy of beauty that's there, and the people there don't understand it.
Yes,
they paid no attention. These beautiful masajids, the call to prayer, the art, the architecture, and they just they want to immigrate to the West.
Right.
Because of this projection of superiority through media, through Hollywood.
And
Even
what's
the-
at
even
what's
the
at the
value
heart of
is
that,
there.
Taz? What's at the heart of that, Ihsan? I think at the heart of it is, and I think many ahadith warn us about this, is that we will be enchanted
Enchanted, yeah.
by the material, shiny world. And I don't see it in our history that we were ever. There were times, but it wasn't when we were a shiny ummah, if you can say that about the Ottomans or the Andalusians. It was lillah, it was for God's sake. And when we tried to imitate, all you need to do is take one step into the yawning Gulf countries and see what it looks like to imitate the West with Eastern sensibilities. It's an absolute disaster. And you get cosmopolitan, secularized cities, still with mosques, still with some remnants of that ancient traditional beauty, but no substance, no richness. And this is what you don't find in cities or places that really almost have been untouched for hundreds of years, like old cities in North Africa, etc. There's a different feel to it. And it's so sad. For people like us, it's so sad because we treasure that. But why do we treasure that? I think it's because we steadily over the years, we're getting older now, we decrease the importance of the material world. And as we do, we increase the importance of spiritual health and wealth and being. That's anti-modern. That is definitely not going to fit in. That's neither going to fit in the West or the East. So what do? We accept the stranger phenomenon, the weird person that people might look at us as, and say, you know what? Yeah, I'm not going to hide this anymore. I don't live. I mean, Oliver Anthony has a song. He has a song, and I think it's titled, "You Weren't Created to Pay Bills and Die." And I was shocked to hear it. I'm like, he's telling the message that every imam ought to say on the minbar. They ought to say that because it feels like that's what we're doing. Paying bills, getting ready, dying. That's not the point. And a Southern Christian is reminding us, in the United States, a Southern Christian is reminding us, this is not what you were created for. And I don't think we've actually heard that message as a community. That's just my observation.
Right.
Not enough. And we have to remember who we are and what we've been given. We have to remember our inheritance and what we have to offer to ourselves and to the world. And the legacy and the inheritance of Islam is beauty and truth.
Yes.
Beauty and truth.
And, hold on a sec. Something just came to my heart, my mind. And our beloved Smooth Jazz Taz hasn't asked us about it. But I knew it would come up, and it's come up in my mind already. How does this play out when we think about the role of the family, and in particular the role of the woman, the mother, the wife, in our hyper-patriarchal traditional paradigm which we inherit in Islam, in all Abrahamic religions really. And now all this inferiority complex, how does this affect the figure of the mother, the wife? And our daughters, we got daughters, Ihsan. We're raising daughters, man.
The father and the men as well.
Right.
And that's an excellent question because that's where it matters. That's where you begin to see the result of these conflicting paradigms. And we see in the West the desecration and the destruction of the family unit.
Right.
Because of a model and a paradigm and a belief system and an idea that just doesn't work. Right. And so us, unfortunately, as Muslims, wanting to be accepted because we have this inferiority complex, wanting to bend over backwards to prove that we're not misogynistic,
right,
that we're not this, that we're not that, please accept us, we're just like you. We're not offering anything of value because their society is collapsing, their culture is collapsing. Right? It's failing altogether. And when we have the actual cure, the medicine, a method, a system, a traditional way of living that actually is healthy and harmonious and successful, and we're losing it because we want to be accepted, because we're afraid that we're going to be labeled this or that?
Do you not think that it's very tragic and sad, dear brothers, that the only time we come back to being confident about speaking about this is when people on the outside speak about it? You hear Elliot Hulls, I know you know him. You hear figures like Andrew Tate, you hear figures like, I don't know, there are many out there that our beloved Imam Yusuf Susi, but even mostly among the non-Muslims that you might call them conservative North Americans, when they say this, we feel empowered. And then now we open our mouths. Yet we had this all along, but nobody opened their mouth.
Exactly, yeah, exactly.
That's an example of the inferiority complex that we didn't talk.
I would say also the lack of knowledge, and forgetfulness, and lack of dhikr. I think it's due to lack of dhikr, because as you said, Ihsan, it's about knowing who you are and being present with your identity, being comfortable in it. And I think that ties back to history as well.
Yeah.
So to remember history, you need dhikr. And for this, I want to bring about the idea of wanting izzah and glory and strength. Speaking about men having inferiority complex. So I want to talk about that as well, in specific. I think men throughout history sought to fit with the stronger party, right? And the party that has strength has glory. And then in the Quran, there's a verse that says, if you want glory, then know that Allah has the entirety, all of it. Izzah. So I want to talk about that.
That's a good question, Taz. I can't say it's not a phenomenon I've experienced. You want to be with the powerful men. You want to fit in with the men who you look up to. As a young boy, as a teenager, I wanted to. And what do you expect if you're not taught who your role models are? I don't think to this day, I have yet to cover the lives of the companions of the Holy Prophet ﷺ with my son, so that he has role models to look up to. So he doesn't get his role models from a YouTube channel that is not morally sound in their teachings. So that comes again, like you mentioned, Taz, about educating our kids. But the inferiority complex comes out because what are we so obsessed with educating our kids about? Study this, study that, because it's going to lead to a great career. And what's a great career going to do? It's going to give you some wealth. And what's that wealth going to do? You'll be able to amass a little bit, and then you might have some prestige. And can you imagine what it would look like if you had some prestige and you have my last name? This is what we do. And that story gets played out generation after generation, instead of teaching our kids, here's where you might find nobility in these men, in these women.
Yeah.
And I know one example of a man who, he's got a few daughters. And in class, as you were mentioning about your life, Ihsan, I remember this situation. The 15-year-old daughter of this man, when they went around the class asking everybody what they want to do with their lives as adults, she said, I want to be a wife and mother very soon. She was 15. The entire class laughed.
Of course.
The entire class laughed because what type of aspirations are those? Where's your determination? You have the world at your fingertips, little girl, and you want to be a wife and mother? Something's got to be fixed. Something's got to be fixed there. And now, how many women do you know, Ihsan, Taz? How many girls do you know that can actually answer like that and be confident?
Well, this is the thing that's so frustrating, because you have an increasing number of women that are not Muslim confidently beginning to say this.
Would you please share the example you gave me of the woman you sent my way in terms of the video? I don't know her title again and what she said about empowerment. You'll have to remind me. It was a great example.
I don't remember which video it was.
Miss America.
Right. Yeah, Miss America. Was it Miss America? It was one of these beauty pageants.
Yeah, give us that example. Oh, I got it. I remember.
Like Leia, or what's her name?
So so this lovely woman, maybe 30 at the most, I don't know. So that should tell you. And then the question she got: when did you feel most empowered in your life? And what did she say, Ihsan? She said, I felt most empowered giving birth to my 7 children.
It's exactly what I was thinking.
She must have been more than 30 years old.
Yeah.
What is more powerful than that? Giving birth to like a soul.
And of course, that can shock the audience who's expecting. When I was awarded the award for most dominant female on the planet as the CEO of this
when I sold my company.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. So that's what she said. Now, that's not glamorous. That's not glamorous. But look, as...
It's glorious. It's glorious.
Exactly. For us, we see that.
But it's glorious.
We see how many of our women, daughters, sisters, mothers, and friends and colleagues, how many would say that from our Muslim communities? I actually know quite a few non-Muslim women who would say that. But I do not know my own faith sisters who would talk like that and be that way.
I would say my grandmother would say that, honestly. My grandmother would definitely say that. Allah yarhamha.
Where does that leave us now in this world?
Right.
No, it's
that's what I'm saying. We've got to decolonize our minds.
Yeah.
We've been sold a lie, man. We've been sold so many lies.
So that's a great question to bring up. I mean, Taz and Ihsan, because I want to follow that point, Ihsan, and maybe Taz can help us here to put it all together. How do we do that, Ihsan? How do we move past that colonized, subservient, inferior place?
People need to start leading in this ummah, whether that's people like us having a conversation. We need, in terms of this specific subject, we need women to start standing up for the truth, unapologetically.
Right.
You've got non-Muslim women, viral videos saying, I would do anything to just be a traditional wife. I finally realized that that's what makes me happy, and that feminism that was sold to us was a lie. It has made us miserable. It has made us lonely. It has ruined our lives. We've sold our souls. Right? Why should I go slave away for a stranger 8 to 10 to 12 hours a day, taking orders from him instead of serving my family?
Right.
What makes any sense? And you've got non-Muslims saying this. And unfortunately, we don't hear enough of it in the Muslim community, just on this topic.
There is an expression in the Quran that says "Ma kabura fi sudurikum," what was made big in your chests, in your hearts. It's basically what empowers you. Is it the CEO? Is it being a CEO, or is it carrying, growing in one of the characters that Allah loves?
Yes.
You know. So as Ihsan says, ironically, it starts with the female, the mother.
Yes.
Because that's where the new generations, the men who are gonna pave the way to this, starts there. I actually started having these conversations with my wife. Actually,
beautiful.
Yeah, gently, and as he says, with you gotta be gentle with ladies, man. You gotta be gentle. So yeah, I started having these conversations, and basically, what does empower you as a woman, and what empowers you will decide if you're going to have inferiority complex in this bizarre society.
I'll just say, that you have exceptions to everything. And if one particular woman really is just naturally, let's say this is more dominant in her nature, and she's got something to do in the world in some capacity, out in the public, out in terms of a company or whatever, innovation, by all means.
Yes.
But what we should reject is that's the model to aspire to.
The only one.
The norm for the majority of people, because it's creating a false paradigm that will lead the majority of people to misery and unhappiness.
Yes.
Most women will find greater fulfillment in a healthy home, in a happy home, in a harmonious home, and righteous and pious children, and a happy and strong and supported husband. Most men will find, you'll have exceptions, and that's fine. You may have those exceptions, but that's not the norm.
Right.
We shouldn't be encouraging all men to be feminine and emasculated. You'll find some men that are perhaps less masculine than others, and that's fine.
It happens. So the individual variation is absolutely normal.
Allah has created it, and there's a place and a purpose for all of that. but we shouldn't be trying to recreate nature and reality to fill some sort of artificial paradigm. And the point is this: we don't have to do the guesswork as Muslims.
That's right.
We don't have to try to figure out how to live based on our own ideas in the moment, whatever is trending in this decade or in this year. We have been given guidance that is ancient, that is timeless, that's eternal. Nothing can change it. Allah says, I have perfected your religion for you. It's not going to get, you can't find better than this.
Yeah, stick to the divine script.
Exactly.
Yeah, I think you're right, Ihsan. I got to echo what you're saying, that maybe the decolonizing, people like to use that in social justice circle, decolonization training. I mean, I just had one at my office. There was a decolonization training for the indigenous population here of Canada. And other than a collective grieving, it really wasn't beneficial because it didn't involve what you just touched upon, which is re-educating. I mean, I tell my 11-year-old daughter that you got about a decade left being my little girl. And she often asks, what do you mean? What do you mean? I said, about a decade would be right. And I continuously remind her, you were meant to be a wife and mother.
Yeah.
So start thinking about it now even. She hasn't even reached ladyhood. But I'm telling her now just to remind her that this is the path for your future. It might not be, but I'm going with what you just described, Ihsan. It's the normal paradigm. It's the traditional paradigm. It may divert a little bit, but we always can plant the seed of tradition in them and see where it takes them. We can't hyper-program, but we can at least plant.
And they can become aware of the programming that's taking place throughout the entire culture and educational program, which is to the opposite of their benefit, to the opposite of their health and success and happiness in life.
Well,
they can at least become aware of it and have a choice.
You've just prescribed for every listener here, myself included, pull your kids out of school immediately. That's what you've just prescribed, and I think that's a fantastic beginning.
Educate yourselves first, of course. You just pull them, and you got to know what you're doing, right?
Right.
I mean, homeschooling you're suggesting here, right? That's explicitly.
I mean,
that's the alternative.
If you want to stop indoctrination, take them get out of the places where indoctrination happens. I used to be, and I think both of you know this, I used to be a bona fide diversity inclusivity consultant. And I did it on the side, and I did this until I started to say, wait a sec, am I just victimizing myself and others? The BIPOC, Black, Indigenous, People of Color, right? Like that's one big grand group, right? BIPOC. I hate the term now. And so then I pulled myself out. I have a lot of training in it. I pulled myself out thinking, I don't want this anymore. I don't want to teach my kids or them to grow up thinking they're victims or less than. And schools do this. Schools program children, no matter what they tell you. It's not a morally neutral place. Schools, especially now, schools program children to have a certain way of thinking. And if you don't reverse that, and sometimes it's not reversible, it's got to be done on their own. But if you don't reverse it as a parent, and I speak as a father, then you are fighting an uphill battle that you may lose. Because what's a 19-year-old, big, strong, healthy, young son, how's he going to say to you, what are you going to say to him saying, I'd like you to change your people you surround yourself with people I approve of. And you can't. You're done. By 17, 18, when they reach 6'2", 6'3", you're done. You just, all you can do is say, I did the best I could. Alhamdulillah wa shukrillah. But if you start at 2 or 3 or 4, and they start they're used to you. They're used to going to the mosque. They're used to seeing a family set up at home that is not chaotic. It is gendered. It is traditional. And it's peaceful. And everybody's at ease with it. But if it's a fight, and if it's continuously trying to convert the husband, the wife, be more like this, be more like that, of course they're going to have an inferiority complex, because when they go to their neighbor's house and it looks all first of all, there might be some shiny material things. And secondly, everybody looks so happy, even though the mom comes home at 6 p.m. drained in a fine dress, and she's about to put together a macaroni craft dinner or something like that, and everybody's happy with it, and that's okay. And the dad is busy in there putting on his apron, helping out. He's going to think, this is a normal North American family. We suck.
Yeah.
I want to actually do this, like my neighbor. And if you add to that a little financial amassing from that family, you're done. That kid's going to have a huge inferiority complex.
Championing and beautifying these traditional values within the kids and in our media, right? As I said initially, like these Western machines that are working day and night, producing amazing like films, right? On the other side, we have, as you said, Jamil, it's like family where we have like negative energy going around, and even though there are traditional values and everything, chaos, negative energy, and nothing that
nobody's at peace
anybody,
with it. Yeah.
So that definitely is a recipe for disaster for these kids. So I think putting effort into producing good social media work or movies or whatever it may be, especially now everybody's on the internet.
Well, I mean, Ihsan touched on this, Taz. You made a great point that complements what Ihsan said is, even if you're in the traditional roles because it's your culture, but it's not from your religious, certainty, that's going to be chaotic because there's a bitterness that goes with that.
Yeah.
I'm just doing this because I'm from Islamistan. Or I'm from Muslimville. And so we do it like this there. And it's not from a place of religion, but rather culture passed on. And then of course that's going to be discomforting. You will look at yourself as, God, I'm here. The woman might say, I'm here slaving around the house all day, doing this, having babies, right? And look at that neighbor of mine. In other words, she's not doing it from a place of choice. Or he's not, and it doesn't mean just her, but anyone. There are men, we know men, we all know men who complain about being the sole providers.
Yeah.
I do all this. One brother said to me, I do all this. My wife contributes nothing to the mortgage, to the rent, to the...
Oh my God.
Oh, you want, as Chris Tucker said, you want a cookie? You're supposed to do this. What do you want? And those are the kind of men that, yes, I would encourage, and everybody listening should perhaps take heed, run away from such men. Distance yourself from such men because they've lost all of what comprises of traditional manliness and manhood, because what they're saying is, why do I have to be so hardworking as a man? Why do I have to provide all this? Can she not contribute?
Yeah, this is disastrous. Even for women, like wives, you don't thank them if you don't champion what they do as wives, as mothers. Like, who else do they have to feel that need, to feel important, to matter? If you tell her you're not contributing in anything, right, and she's doing your dinners and lunch and taking care of your kids.
Best way to get her to stop.
Yeah, that's disastrous, right? So, I don't know.
So what you're saying, Taz, is I think going to complement the idea that Ihsan brought up about re-educating ourselves is do it from a place of choice. Is it we have these minimalist movements online and in real life, and a lot of it comes from East Asia, etc. And then it's becoming cool now to not have a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
And to not actually take up too much space, right? And yet we have a concept in Islam called zuhud.
See, that's what I'm talking about.
And it was alive way before minimalism.
Because someone championed it. Someone put it up there, in a documentary. It all started with a documentary, if you know this. That went so viral. From that documentary, like, more and more works were displayed on, like, YouTube and our videos. Like, our values are not championed, are not being beautified, are not set out there in a nice, they're quite important and quite precious. You want to put them in a plate of gold, not a plate of...
And they're being championed in a different brand with different people, and they're not giving credit to the Muslims for actually... And why? Because we've abandoned it.
Exactly. We've lost it.
We've lost it.
Let alone
Go to an average middle-class house in Cairo and look at the plasticized sofas in there that are Victorian era, and compare that to a traditional simple living room in Central Asia, Afghanistan, or even in North Africa or West Africa, where they're really not so influenced by Eurocentric sensibilities, you're going to see the difference. And those people are at peace. They're relaxed. They're in a tent, maybe in Mauritania, for example. But they're people. Look, we go all the way there from here. We have everything here, and we go over there and almost clay homes, tents, because they have a simplicity that we're jealous of.
Yeah, and I think there's also an element of seeking novelty. Like humans, they have this. They always seek novelty. Like wherever they are, they want to see something.
And our teachers tell us to tame that. Our teachers tell us stability is better. Stability. And I met people in Marrakesh, beautiful, beautiful families in Marrakesh, that it's not that they had never left Morocco. They had never left Marrakesh. They never got on a train to go to Fez, or a train to go to, or on a bus to go south to Agadir. They knew their city within the walls of their city, and that's all they knew, and they were happy. They were happy. There wasn't even this, sure, on the satellite they'll see all kinds of stuff, but they realized that's not for us.
They must be traveling a lot inwardly.
Exactly.
Yeah.
We've lost that, I think. Well, let's not, okay, so as we close up here, I don't want to end this on a sour note.
Yeah.
How do we make some positive changes? And those listening and those wanting to contribute, let's put our hearts together and see how we can actually contribute to reversing this, because it's tragic. It's tragic. Ihsan and I, we're fathers. It keeps us up at night. I know it keeps me up at night. I won't speak for you, but I think of the world that my children will inherit. And the values I'm teaching them, how strange will they actually be? Will they be able to hold on to it? I hope and pray they will.
I mean a lot. And I would say, again, it's just a reminder for myself and for anybody that might find some value in it. We have to really take a hard look at ourselves and remember who we are and what we have to offer the world. And this means, you've mentioned it several times, Jamil, re-education or education, right? This is a religion and a way of life based in learning. So I'll give you an example. When I first started fasting, some 30 years ago, I can't tell you how many people told me, among Muslims, secular Muslims, why are you fasting? It's not good for you. It's not healthy. You're going to deprive your body of nutrients. Right? Muslims, colonized mind, colonized thinking.
Right.
And now you have, in the last 10, 15 years, so much knowledge and information coming out about the benefits of fasting. Like only now will the Muslims accept.
Exactly.
That fasting is actually good for you. It's probably the best thing you can possibly do for your health.
Yeah.
Because now it's been proven scientifically.
Right.
We know from the beginning that we should be fasting, and there's reason for it, divine reason, divine wisdom. We should be the science. Where's the Muslim scientists discovering the health benefits of fasting, for example? So this applies to everything: family structure, health choices, spiritual and meditative practice. We should be the first ones to be finding the benefits of meditative practice.
Right.
Or are we the last ones?
Right.
We have forgotten what we have. It's like we're like a gargoyle sitting on a treasure chest, preventing other people from getting to it, and we don't even understand the benefit that's inside of this box of gold that we've been given by Allah Almighty, by our Prophet ﷺ.
I think even in the language that people use, we can sense a loss. I was, when I lived in Morocco, what we call herbal treatments and herbal medicine, you know what they call that? Dawa al-Muslimin, the medicine of believers, the medicine of the Muslims, when they use herbs and spices and teas and all kinds of stuff, which is very traditional. So in other words, when you take a Tylenol or an Advil or an antihistamine, you're going against the medicine of the Muslims. And so they even name it like that. They even talk that way. And so then they'll say Dawa Rumi, European or foreign medicine. And what they're saying is, here's something outside of our tradition. It's not to down it. It's to say, well, let's try and abandoning ours for a bit and see if we can gain some benefit. Whereas for centuries, they were okay. They were fine, with exception, obviously. So I can see it in the language, and having traveled a good chunk of the Muslim world, I can see it in the behavior, and it's tragic, but I think we can get it back. And maybe you're both right about October 7th, and what has transpired after October 7th is kind of a wake up for everyone.
Definitely is.
I think it is too, because we can see, because the hope is gone. The hope that every defeated, self-hating Arab that ever, and not only Arab, I'm just singling out them, that they've ever had, that one day we'll be like them. One day we'll have what they have. That hope is gone.
Yeah.
Because they realized nobody cares about them. They're the most humiliated people on the planet.
Exactly.
Nobody cares. And they're finally realizing that now. And I just hope and pray that they respond with dignity and not rage and not revenge.
No, there are good things happening right now.
Yeah,
there are
alhamdulillah.
really good things happening. And the good thing is that there are people out there educated. Mm-hmm. And alhamdulillah that this era of the internet that replaced TVs, right? Finally, you have people of such caliber, have their voices out there and people can hear them. So I think that's kind of is a good thing, and alhamdulillah that it's happening. Jamil, like I think after 7 October, I think people who are looking at other people's values, now it's exposed. It's not what you think. A shiny thing was not reflecting the gold. It was reflecting something else that you wouldn't be happy adopting.
The world is changing, and we are witnessing a polar shift.
Yes.
Yeah. And in a blink of an eye, Ihsan, in a blink of an eye. It's like in a matter of a week.
Yeah, I mean, literally the compass of the world is shifting. It's going to shift from the west to the east. So my advice, my recommendation to myself and everybody is to lead. Don't be a follower.
And we also we see the exact. So we see after October 7th and what has transpired, we see a number of Western people becoming interested in Islam, just like after 9/11. And what I'm noticing is that people are accepting Islam right, left, and center. There was just another fighter, a Canadian UFC fighter that became Muslim just a couple of weeks ago, I think. I just took my son to a brand new boxing club, and you'd have no indication. And I just said to my son, Bismillah, get out there, get your gloves and get out there. And he said to me, oh, you're Muslim too? No indication. He's a Golden Gloves, and he said, I'm Muslim. He gave me a big hug. I could see that it's not strange anymore. And yet, at the same time, in our holy land, in Saudi Arabia, host of the two cities, we have satanic performances. And I'm not exaggerating with that language. That's choiceful. Satanic performances, and men and women from noble backgrounds entering hotels without any marriage certificate, without anything. And we all know it's not only men and women entering hotels, it's men and men, because this is something that's a problem on Arabian Peninsula. So we're seeing a complete flip, as you mentioned this. It's just changing everywhere. And no longer, it's strange. It's very strange. I have no idea where to go. It's like that other song by Oliver Anthony. I don't know what road to go. I just know that Islam has given us a lot of guidance, and we take it and try to have wisdom in how we apply it. We're going to make mistakes. It's fine. We're going to slip. It's also fine. But at least we're not using another man's yardstick. When we have the yardstick, the asa, the holy stick of the Prophet ﷺ, we don't need any other sticks. We don't need any other measurements. So I think if we can educate ourselves that way, take teachers, those who are listening right now, take teachers who are traditional and who do not come from defeated cultures.
Exactly, yeah. And even circles.
Your circles, the brotherly circles.
That walk with dignity. Find them and stick to them, because
you need a good friend in this day and era. You need
I needed a good friend. I was there. I needed a circle where, like I said, if you need to feel empowered, absolutely. I want to feel powerful with the real power. I want a real power. I want like some fluff, and
nobody wants to be disempowered. So if you go to a circle of apologists, they'll rub off on you.
Yeah.
And if you go to a circle of people who are comfortable in their own skin, They walk with dignity on God's green earth. They're confident. They're, you might even say proud. There could be a little dose of swagger.
Swagger.
Then you get in there and you be like, okay, you know what? Fellas, what's up with you all? Because I'd like to have a little taste of what you're drinking. And who knows what's in their tea. And that's healthy. That's good. That means that's suhbah.
دواء المسلمين in their tea.
Yes, exactly. So may we be brothers for each other in this path to help us be empowered and not disempowered. And may we find others such that they can help us and we help them. As Marshall Rosenberg used to say, the giving and the receiving ought to be indistinguishable. It's just smooth like butter, giving with each other. So alhamdulillah.
Alhamdulillah.
May it be so. This might need a part 2. What do you all think? This topic is so grand.
I think it is grand that it also transition into other topics as well. It's not mutually exclusive with other topics. Like it's hard to keep it in a in its own like niche, I would say. But yeah, inshallah, we might have part 2, maybe with another topic adjacent to it. So
look out for a retreat coming up soon, everyone, about reviving this traditional spirit. Look out for it for men, and another one for women. We're going to start out with the men first because we're men doing this work. So look out for that. That's coming soon. And
really, Jamil? I didn't know about that.
We'll keep you all posted.
All right, I'm going to look out for that.
Look out for it.
Yeah. I don't know about that, Arshan. Okay, good. Thanks. Barakallah. Okay, Ihsan, anything else to say? I think we're going to wrap it here, inshallah.
Get strong. Stay strong, brothers and sisters.
And stick with the strong, and the strong with character, a character that penetrates through all, under any circumstance. So, inshallah, alhamdulillah, thanks for joining us tonight. It's late, actually. Thanks for joining us, Jamil and Ihsan. I look forward to having you again, inshallah, in the next episode. Thanks, everyone, for watching. And dumtum salimin. Walhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen.